The great council chamber on throne world Zeth, 9, was made of black stone that seemed to drink the light. For 80,000 years, the Cathrel Empire had ruled the stars from this room. 17 different alien species served under their banner. Their fleets had crushed every rebellion. Their name was feared across half the galaxy. And today, they were about to make the biggest mistake in their long history. High Admiral Voskara Thal stood at the center of the chamber. She was tall, even for her species, with 4 sharp mandibles that clicked when she was amused. Right now, she was very amused. In front of her floated a glowing image of a small blue and green planet. The humans called it Earth. She called it her next conquest. "My lords," she began, her voice smooth and sure. "I have reviewed the scout reports myself. This species is no threat to us. They have 12 billion people on one single world. They have only reached the nearest stars. Their ships use fusion drives that we abandoned 20,000 years ago. Their weapons are laughable." The council members listened with bored expressions. They had heard this kind of speech many times before. Another weak species. Another easy conquest. Another world added to the empire. "I propose we send a single pacification fleet," Admiral Thal continued. 200 capital ships, 10,000 fighters, 3 million ground troops. This is more than enough to crush any resistance these humans might offer. Within one cycle, Earth will be paying tribute to the Empire, and their young will be serving in our armies. The vote was quick and unanimous. Every council member raised their hand. Not one voice spoke against the plan. Why would they? The Threll had never lost a war. They had conquered hundreds of worlds, using fleets half this size. The humans would fall like all the others. What the council did not know was that humanity had been watching them for a very long time. 200 years earlier, a young Terran scientist named Dr. Marcus Webb had been listening to deep space signals when he picked up something strange. It was a transmission in a language no human had ever heard. But the computers could tell it was a military order. Someone out there was giving commands to a fleet. Someone out there had ships. Dr. Webb took his findings to the United Terran government. Within a week, every leader on Earth was meeting in secret. They listened to more transmissions. They learned that the galaxy was not empty. It was full of life. And most of that life was ruled by a cruel empire that conquered every world it found. The humans had a choice to make. They could try to hide forever. They could try to run. Or they could prepare. They chose to prepare. The Deep Silence Protocol was created that very year. Every government on Earth agreed to it. Every major nation signed. From that day forward, humanity would pretend to be weak. They would hide their true strength behind clever tricks. They would let the Cathrel scouts see only what humans wanted them to see. The fusion drives the Cathrel scouts detected? Those were old models, kept running for show. The real human ships used something far more advanced. The population numbers the scouts recorded? Those were from Earth alone. Humans had quietly colonized a dozen other star systems, all hidden behind stealth fields that the Cathrel could not detect. The weak defense platforms the scouts saw, they were empty shells. The real defenses were buried deep inside asteroids and hidden in the clouds of gas giants. For 200 years, every human child grew up knowing the truth. War was coming. The Empire would find them one day. And when that day came, humanity had to be ready. Every scientific discovery was turned into a weapon or hidden away. Every extra credit in the economy went into the reserve, the secret military force that humanity was building. Every spare ship was armed. Every spare rock in the solar system was turned into a hidden base. The whole of human civilization became one giant trap, waiting patiently for the Empire to walk into it. Deep inside a hollowed-out asteroid near Neptune, Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen sat in her command chair and read the intercepted message from the Cathrel Council. Her face was calm, but her eyes were sharp. She had trained her whole life for this moment. Her parents had trained for it. Her grandparents had trained for it. Every human officer in the reserve had been born and raised for exactly this situation. "They are sending a pacification fleet," she said quietly to her second-in-command, Commodore James Okonkwo. 200 capital ships, They think that will be enough. Commodore Okonkwo nodded. He was a big man with a steady voice. What are your orders, Admiral? Chen stood up slowly. She looked at the star map on the wall. Little red dots showed where the Cathrel fleet would appear. Little blue dots showed where humanity's hidden ships were waiting. The blue dots far outnumbered the red ones, and the Cathrel had no idea. Wake up the reserve, she said. All of it. The Commodore's eyes went wide. All of it, Admiral? The entire reserve? That has never been done before. Not even in training drills. All of it, Chen repeated. But we will not show them everything at once. No. We will teach them a lesson slowly. We will let them think they have seen our full strength. And then, when they come back with more ships, we will show them more of ours, step by step, until they understand. Understand what, Admiral? Chen smiled, but it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who had waited 200 years for this day. Understand that they were never fighting a small species. They were fighting the patient dead. Every human who ever feared the Empire. Every grandmother who taught her grandchildren to prepare. Every scientist who worked on secret weapons. Every builder who hid ships in the dark. They are all here. And they are all angry. The Commodore saluted and turned to carry out his orders. Across the solar system, hidden doors began to open. Hidden engines began to power up. Hidden weapons began to come online. The reserve was awakening. Far away, on throne world Zeth, 9, Admiral Thale raised a glass of sweet wine to celebrate her coming victory. Her mandibles clicked with joy. She was certain of two things. First, that humanity would fall within days. Second, that this would be the easiest campaign of her long career. She was wrong about both. The pacification fleet launched the next day. 200 proud warships of the Cathrel Empire, flying banners that had hung in 1,000 conquered capitals. They moved through fold space toward the small yellow star the humans called Sol. Their captains laughed and joked. Their soldiers prepared for easy glory. Their officers already planned the tribute they would collect. None of them knew they were flying straight into a trap that had been 200 years in the making. None of them would ever see home again. The pacification fleet came out of fold space at the edge of the Sol system, with all the pride of an empire that had never known defeat. 200 warships spread out in a perfect attack formation. Their hulls were painted in the black and gold colors of the Cathrel Empire. Their weapons were charged and ready. Their crews were confident. Admiral Voskara Thal stood on the bridge of her flagship, the mighty battleship Time's Conqueror's Pride. She watched the small blue planet grow larger on her main screen. Earth, such a tiny world, such a weak species. She almost felt sorry for the humans. Almost. Open a channel on all frequencies, she ordered. Let us give these creatures the standard ultimatum. Perhaps they will be wise and surrender without a fight. It would save us the trouble of cleaning up afterward. Her communications officer opened the channel. Admiral Thal began speaking in the trade language that most civilized species understood. Humans of Earth. This is High Admiral Voskara Thal of the Cathrel Empire. Your system is now property of the Empire. You have 1 hour to surrender. If you surrender, you will be allowed to live as client citizens. You will pay tribute. You will send your young to serve in our armies. You will accept our culture as your own. If you do not surrender, we will destroy your military forces and take your world by force. The choice is yours. Choose wisely. She leaned back in her command chair and waited. Usually, the response was immediate. Panic, begging, pleading for mercy. Sometimes there was angry defiance, but that always turned to fear quickly enough. What she got instead was something very different. A human face appeared on her screen. He was a dark-skinned man with a calm expression and steady eyes. His uniform was simple and clean. Behind him, she could see the bridge of a warship, but the design was strange. Nothing like the scout reports had described. Greetings, Admiral Thal, the human said politely. His voice was translated perfectly into her own language. I am Commodore James Okonkwo of the Terran Outer Picket Force. I have received your message. I am authorized to give you our answer. Admiral Thal smiled. And what is your answer, human? My answer is a question, Admiral. Would you prefer to surrender now, or would you like us to give you a demonstration first? For a moment, the entire bridge of the Times Conqueror's Pride Times went silent. Then Admiral Thale began to laugh. Her mandibles clicked wildly. Her officers joined her laughter. The translated words must be wrong. Surely this human was joking. A small species with outdated fusion drives asking them times to surrender. Oh, human, Admiral Thal said between laughs. You amuse me. Very well. Show me this demonstration of yours. Let me see what your fusion ships can do against real warships. Commodore Okonkwo did not smile. As you wish, Admiral. Please note that we will be using less than half of our available force. We do not wish to destroy your entire fleet. Not yet. Consider this a warning. The channel closed. Admiral Thal was still laughing when her sensor officer made a strange noise. It was a noise of shock. A noise of terror. The Admiral looked at him sharply. What is it? Admiral, 40 human ships just appeared out of nothing. They were not there a moment ago. Now, they are all around us. Thal spun to look at the tactical display. Her laughter died in her throat. 40 ships had indeed appeared from empty space. But that was impossible. Her sensors were the best in the Empire. They should have detected any cloaked vessel. Yet there they were, perfectly positioned around her fleet in attack formation. Open fire, she shouted. Destroy them all. The Keithrel plasma lances fired first. Beams of superheated energy shot across space toward the human ships. These weapons had cracked open planets. They had burned through the shields of rebel dreadnoughts. They were the pride of the Imperial fleet. The plasma beams reached the human ships and then did something that made every Keithrel officer gasp. They bent. The beams curved around the human vessels, like water flowing around a rock. Not one beam hit its target. They all slid past the human ships and flew harmlessly into empty space. That is not possible, whispered the sensor officer. They are bending light and plasma with some kind of gravity field. Our scientists said such technology was impossible. Then the humans fired back. Their weapons were nothing like the Imperial arsenal. Some ships launched solid projectiles that flew at nearly the speed of light. When these projectiles hit a Keithrel warship, they punched straight through the armor and came out the other side. Other human ships fired missiles that seemed to disappear and reappear inside the Imperial shields, exploding from within. A few vessels used strange beam weapons that did not burn or melt their targets. Instead, the beams simply made matter stop existing. Whole sections of Keithrel battleships vanished like they had never been there. In the first 2 minutes, 20 Imperial ships were destroyed. In the next 2 minutes, 40 more were lost. By the 6th minute, 80 Keithrel warships were gone, and the rest were damaged. Admiral Thal watched in horror as her fleet was torn apart. Nothing was working. Her weapons could not hit the humans. Their weapons ignored her shields. Her ships were huge and proud and ancient. Their ships were small and fast and deadly. Retreat, she finally screamed. All ships, fall back to the outer system. Regroup at the Kuiper line. The surviving Keithrel ships turned and fled. The humans did not chase them. They simply watched the Imperial fleet run away. Admiral Thale sat in her command chair, shaking with a mix of rage and fear. Her proud fleet was broken. Her reputation was ruined. 80 ships lost in 6 minutes. This was worse than any defeat in Imperial history. As her damaged fleet limped toward the outer system, she demanded answers. Her intelligence officer, a small, trembling creature, brought her the report she had requested. Admiral, I have analyzed the human transmissions we intercepted during the battle. I have decoded their communications. Tell me everything, Thale hissed. The human Commodore. He was telling the truth, Admiral. The 40 ships that attacked us were not their full force. They were something called the Outer Picket Force. It is a small defensive unit stationed at the edge of their system. A small unit? 40 ships destroyed 80 of ours in 6 minutes, and you call this a small unit? The intelligence officer swallowed hard. Admiral, according to the human communications, those 40 ships represent approximately 2% of humanity's total deployed fleet. The bridge of the Times Conqueror's Pride Times went completely silent. Admiral Thal stared at her intelligence officer with wide eyes. Her mandibles hung loose, forgotten. 2%? She finally whispered. Yes, Admiral, 2%. And there was more. The humans call their main force the reserve. They mentioned that the reserve has not yet been activated. What we just fought was only the guard at the door. The real army is still inside the house. Admiral Thale felt cold fear creep up her spine for the first time in 400 years of service. She had come to conquer Earth with 200 warships. She had just lost nearly half her fleet to 2% of humanity's strength. She needed reinforcements. She needed a lot of them. And she needed to warn the Empire. Humanity was not what they had thought. Humanity was something much, much worse. Admiral Thal sent her emergency message to Throne World Zeth 9 from her damaged flagship. She did not tell the full truth. She was too afraid of looking weak. Instead, she described the battle as a dangerous surprise. She said the humans had used some kind of trick. She requested massive reinforcements to crush this unexpected threat before it became a problem for the whole Empire. When the Imperial Council received her message, they were shocked and angry. A pacification fleet had never been defeated before. Not in 80,000 years. If word spread to the client species, there could be rebellions across the Empire. This had to be ended quickly and brutally. An example had to be made. The Council voted to send the Third Grand Armada. This was one of the largest military forces the Empire had. 800 capital ships, 50,000 fighters, and something far worse, the Void Reaper. The Void Reaper was the most feared weapon in the Empire. It was a massive ship, as long as a mountain range. Its main weapon could crack open planets. It had been used 3 times in the Empire's history. Each time, an entire rebel world had been destroyed as a warning to others. The Council believed that bringing out the Void Reaper would end the human resistance in a single terrible moment. While the Third Grand Armada gathered its forces and began its journey through fold space, something was happening back at Earth. Something that no scout had ever detected. Something the Empire would not believe until it was too late. The reserve was waking up. In the thick clouds of Jupiter, huge doors opened in the sky. From inside the gas giant, massive shipyards that had been hidden for centuries began to release their ships. These were not small vessels. These were battleships and cruisers and carriers, thousands of them. They rose from the clouds like whales coming up for air, and they kept coming and coming and coming. Beneath the icy surface of Europa, water-filled shipyards flooded and drained in a careful dance. Human-designed warships, built in secret over 200 years, floated up through melted ice channels. The moon itself seemed to give birth to a fleet. On Titan, under the orange haze, military bases that looked like simple research stations from space revealed their true nature. Tens of thousands of fighters and drones launched into the sky. The small moon became a swarm of metal and fire heading for battle positions. Asteroids that had seemed completely normal began to move. Their stony surfaces cracked open to reveal weapons platforms the size of small cities. Each one carried enough firepower to destroy a Kathrel battleship with a single shot. There were hundreds of them, scattered throughout the asteroid belt like sleeping dragons finally opening their eyes. But the most amazing sight was around the sun itself. For 2 centuries, humanity had been building a Dyson swarm. This was not a complete sphere around the Sunday. It was thousands upon thousands of energy collection stations, each one the size of a small moon, spread out in careful orbits. They had been quietly gathering the sun's power for generations. That power had been used to build the reserve. And now, that same power would be used to destroy the invaders. Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of her new flagship, the Time's patience rewarded. It was a ship the Empire did not know existed. 10 kilometers long, armed with weapons that human scientists had only been able to build because of the Dyson swarm's unlimited power. It was a warship designed for exactly one purpose: to kill Imperial dreadnoughts. Status report, Chen ordered. Admiral, all reserve units are online, reported her operations officer. 12,000 warships deployed. 8 million fighters and drones ready. All weapons platforms active. The Dyson swarm is operating at full capacity. We have enough power to fight for 1,000 years without running low. Chen nodded calmly. And our hidden colonies? Standing by, Admiral. They have not been called upon. Yet. Good. Keep them hidden. The Empire does not need to see everything at once. Not yet. Let them think this is our full strength. Let them come at us with everything they have. Then we will teach them the next lesson. The Third Grand Armada came out of fold space at the edge of the Sol system 3 weeks later. Their sensors nearly overloaded from what they detected. Admiral Thal, who had waited at the Kuiper line with her damaged fleet, stared at the readings in total shock. Her flagship's sensor officer was speaking, but his words seemed to come from far away. Admiral, I am detecting 12,000 warships, 8 million smaller vessels, weapons platforms with readings I cannot even measure, and a power output from the human sun that should not be possible. It is as if they are using the star itself as their energy source. Admiral Thal sat in her command chair, feeling something she had never felt in 400 years of military service. Real fear. Bone-deep terror. She had thought the 40 ships at the first battle were humanity's main force. She had thought that the pacification fleet had just been unlucky. She had been wrong. She had been so terribly wrong. The 40 ships had been a times picket force, a border guard. Humanity's real strength had been hidden all along, and now it was right in front of her. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a horrible thought began to grow. If this times, was humanity's homeworld defense, what did they have if they ever decided to attack someone else? What was hidden in the dark corners of space, waiting to be unleashed? The Grand Admiral of the Third Armada, a proud warrior named Krell Vantarax, refused to be afraid. He had fought 100 battles. He had crushed dozens of rebellions. He ordered the Void Reaper to fire its main weapon at Earth. Better to destroy the human homeworld immediately than to fight this nightmare fleet. The Void Reaper's massive weapon began to charge. Energy gathered from across the ship and focused into a single beam. When it fired, the beam cut through space, like a knife through silk. It had enough power to break open a planet. It should have ended the war right there. The beam traveled toward Earth, burning through the vacuum at impossible speeds. Then one of the human weapon platforms moved. It was one of the smallest platforms in the asteroid belt. Its shield came up. The Void Reaper's beam hit the shield and, instead of breaking through, was absorbed into it. The platform glowed brightly for a moment. Then it fired the same beam back. The Void Reaper, pride of the Couthrell Empire, ceased to exist. One moment, the mountain-sized ship was there. The next moment, there was only a flash of light brighter than the sun itself. When the light faded, only floating debris remained. The humans had not just defended against the Empire's ultimate weapon, they had turned it back against its owner. On Admiral Thal's bridge, her officers stood frozen in horror. She herself could not speak. She could not move. The Void Reaper had been their trump card, their final answer to any threat, and the humans had destroyed it with what seemed like minimal effort. "What?" she finally whispered. "Have we woken up?" The answer came from the cold darkness of space, as 12,000 human warships began to advance. The battle that followed lasted less than an hour. The Third Grand Armada, the pride of the Couthrell Empire, was torn to pieces by the awakened reserve. 800 Imperial capital ships were reduced to broken metal floating in space. 50,000 fighters were swept from the sky like dust. The humans fought with cold precision. They did not celebrate. They did not gloat. They simply did their jobs, as if they had practiced this battle 1,000 times in their minds, which in truth, they had. Grand Admiral Krell Vantarax died when his flagship was cut in half by a human weapon that no one in the Empire had ever seen before. His last words were a confused question to his officers. How are they doing this? No one answered him. They were all dead seconds later. Only one Imperial ship was spared. The Times Conqueror's Pride, Admiral Voskara Thal's flagship, was surrounded by a dozen human vessels and held in place by some kind of tractor field. Her weapons were disabled. Her engines were shut down. She could not move. She could not fight. She could not even die with honor. A small human shuttle approached her flagship and requested permission to dock. Admiral Thal considered refusing. But what was the point? If she refused, the humans would simply force their way in. Better to accept this final humiliation, with whatever dignity she had left. The shuttle landed in her main hangar. The door opened, and human Marines stepped out. They wore power armor that gleamed under the hangar lights. The armor was sleek and graceful, unlike the heavy-plated suits used by Imperial soldiers. The humans moved with the easy confidence of warriors who had never lost a fight. Their weapons were small but looked very dangerous. There were only 12 of them. 12 humans boarding an Imperial flagship with a crew of 3,000. And yet Admiral Thal knew, without any doubt, that those 12 could fight their way to her bridge if they wanted to. Fortunately, they did not need to fight. Imperial troops had been ordered to stand down. The Admiral's personal guard escorted the humans to a meeting room near the bridge. There, Admiral Thal waited with 3 of her senior officers. A human woman entered the room. She was smaller than the Marines and wore no armor. Her clothes were simple and professional. Her hair was gray. Her eyes were kind. And somehow, she was more frightening than any soldier. "Admiral Thal," she said politely, in perfect Imperial trade language. "I am Ambassador Elena Vasquez of the Terran Concordat. Thank you for agreeing to speak with me. Please, sit down. This may take some time." Admiral Thal sat. What else could she do? Her fleet was destroyed. Her weapon was gone. Her empire had just suffered its greatest military defeat in 80,000 years. And here was this small human woman speaking to her as politely as if they were meeting at a peaceful trade conference. "You will want to know what just happened," Ambassador Vasquez said. "You will want to know why your fleet was destroyed so easily. And you will want to know what happens next. I am here to explain all of these things to you. I will be honest. I will tell you the truth, even the parts that will frighten you. I think you have earned that much." The ambassador opened a small device and began to show Admiral Thal images and data. She explained everything from the beginning. 200 years ago, a human scientist had detected an Imperial transmission. That discovery changed everything. Humanity learned that the galaxy was not empty. They learned about the K'threl Empire. They learned what happened to worlds that were conquered. They learned what happened to species that tried to resist. "We had a choice," the ambassador said calmly. "We could try to hide forever, but we knew you would find us eventually. We could try to negotiate, but we saw how you treated other species. We could try to run, but we had nowhere to go. So we chose the only option that made sense to us. We chose to prepare. For 200 years, every human child had been raised with one great purpose. Humanity had turned its entire civilization into a war machine, but they had hidden this from the Empire. They had let the Imperial scouts see only what they wanted them to see. They had deliberately appeared weak. Every scientific discovery we made was turned into a weapon or hidden away," the ambassador continued. "Every extra credit in our economy went to the military. Every child learned how to fight. Every adult had a role in the preparation. We built our hidden shipyards. We built our reserve fleet. We built our Dyson swarm. We built our colonies in secret. And we waited. For 200 years, we waited for you to come." Admiral Thal felt her mandibles tremble. "Why are you telling me all of this?" "Because I want you to understand," said Ambassador Vasquez. "I want you to carry this message back to your council. I want you to tell them exactly what humanity has done and exactly what we are, and I want you to see this." The ambassador pressed a button on her device. A new display appeared, showing fleet numbers and military strength reports. "This is what destroyed your pacification fleet. Our outer picket force, 40 ships. This is what destroyed your third Grand Armada just now. Our reserve home fleet, 12,000 ships. Together, these two forces represent approximately 15% of humanity's total military strength." Admiral Thal stared at the numbers. Her eyes refused to focus. Her mind refused to accept what she was seeing. 15%? "Yes, Admiral, 15%. The other 85% is hidden across 12 colony star systems that your scouts have never detected. We have stealth technology your scientists still believe is impossible. We have 80,000 more warships out there, Admiral. They are not even deployed. They are simply waiting, in case we need them." The Admiral could not breathe. Her hearts were beating too fast. Her mind was spinning. 80,000 more warships. Hidden. Waiting. An entire second military, larger than the first, ready to be called upon. You mean, she finally whispered, her voice breaking, that wasn't their full army? Ambassador Vasquez smiled a small, sad smile. No, Admiral. That was not our full army. That was not even close. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Admiral Thal realized, in that terrible moment, that the Threll Empire had never been fighting a small, weak species. They had been sleepwalking toward a carefully prepared trap for 200 years. And now the trap had closed. Here is what happens next, the ambassador said, her voice still gentle. You will return to your council. You will tell them everything I have told you. And then, you will deliver our terms. She handed Admiral Thal a small data crystal. The Empire will withdraw from the Orion Arm. Completely. Every ship, every soldier, every official. You will free every client species currently under your rule. You will pay reparations to every world you have ever subjugated. And you will sign a peace treaty agreeing never to expand in this direction again. And if we refuse? Ambassador Vasquez's smile did not change, but her eyes grew very cold. If you refuse, Admiral, humanity will show you what the other 85% of our military can do. But I sincerely hope you will choose wisely. We would prefer peace. We have wanted peace all along. We just wanted to make sure we could guarantee it. The meeting was over. Admiral Thal was released with her damaged flagship and sent home to deliver her terrible message. And as she flew through fold space toward Throne World Zeth 9, she could think of only one thing. Humanity had been hiding in the dark, watching, building, waiting, and the Empire had walked right into their trap. Admiral Vasquez Thal returned to Throne World Zeth 9 as a broken warrior delivering a terrible message. She stood before the Imperial Council and told them everything. The 40 human ships that destroyed her pacification fleet, the 12,000 warships that wiped out the Third Grand Armada, the Void Reaper, pride of the Empire, turned to dust in a single moment. And worst of all, the hidden 80,000 warships that humanity still had in reserve. The council chamber exploded into chaos. Some members screamed in rage, others sat in stunned silence. A few quietly began to weep, for they understood what this meant for the Empire. The Kathrel had never faced an enemy stronger than themselves. They did not know how to handle such a situation. The debate that followed lasted many days and nights. Two clear sides formed within the council. The first side was led by War Minister Grelix Vorn. He was a proud hardliner, old and stubborn, who had never accepted defeat in his long life. He stood before the council and beat his chest with all four fists. This is an insult to our empire, he roared. For 80,000 years we have ruled the stars. Will we now bow to a small species from a backwater planet? Never. I demand that we call every fleet from every sector, every superweapon from every vault, every soldier from every world. Let us bring the full might of the Empire against Earth. Let us crush these humans so completely that no species will ever dare to challenge us again. Many council members cheered his words. Their pride would not allow them to accept humanity's terms. Better to die fighting than to surrender without a war. The second side was led by Chancellor Veshii Nalora. She was younger than the war minister, but she was also wiser. She had studied humanity carefully since the first reports came in. She understood what Admiral Thale had said about the hidden colonies and the 80,000 reserve warships. War Minister Vorn speaks of pride, Chancellor Nalora said quietly. But pride is what brought us to this disaster. We were too proud to truly study the humans. We were too proud to take them seriously. Now we face a species that has been preparing for war with us for 200 years. 200 years. While we laughed and called them primitive. They have more ships hidden than we have in our entire fleet. If we go to war with them again, we will lose. And this time, they will not be offering peace terms. This time, they will destroy us completely. The argument raged on. But in the end, pride won out over wisdom. The hardliners had more votes. The council decided to refuse humanity's terms and prepare for total war. What no one in the council chamber knew was that Chancellor Nalora and several other wise members had already been secretly communicating with humanity. For months before this meeting, they had been sending messages to Ambassador Vasquez, They had shared information. They had made quiet agreements. They were not alone in this either. Across the empire, leaders of the client species had also been receiving human visitors. Quiet diplomats who spoke of freedom, of trade, of a galaxy where no species ruled another. The humans had not just been building an army. They had been building friendships. They had been building a new future. And when the empire chose war instead of peace, that future began to take shape. It took the Kethrel 2 full years to gather the Grand Imperial Fleet. It was the largest military force ever assembled in the history of the galaxy. 300,000 capital ships, millions of smaller craft. Every sector contributed. Every world sent its finest warriors. Even planets that had been client states for 10,000 years sent their forces, though some of them did so with hidden smiles. Ships from dozens of conquered species gathered together, all under the banner of the empire that had enslaved them. During those same 2 years, humanity made no aggressive moves. They did not attack imperial worlds. They did not push outward into imperial space. They simply continued to prepare, quietly and patiently, as they had done for 2 centuries before. When the Grand Imperial Fleet finally moved toward Sol, it came with the certainty of an empire that had convinced itself it could not truly lose. 300,000 warships moving together. A force so large that its fold space wake disturbed stars and knocked small moons from their orbits. The officers at its head believed they would end humanity forever within a single day of battle. They arrived at the edge of the Sol system and found waiting for them not just humanity's reserve, but something else. Something the Imperial officers could barely understand at first. Fleet after fleet appeared from the darkness of space. Ships of different designs. Ships belonging to 47 different species. Every one of those species was a former client of the Empire. Everyone had suffered under Kethrel rule for generations, and everyone had received a quiet message from humanity, inviting them to choose this moment, to finally be free. When the former client species saw humanity's full reserve awakening to face the Empire, they realized that freedom was finally possible. One by one, at the exact same moment, 47 civilizations rose up in rebellion. They sent their fleets to join humanity at Earth. They attacked imperial garrisons in their own systems. The entire empire shook to its foundations in a single day. The Battle of Sol lasted 9 hours. 80,000 human reserve ships joined the 12,000 home fleet vessels. Alongside them fought the combined fleets of 47 rebel species, perhaps another 100,000 warships in total. They faced the Grand Imperial Fleet in open space at the edge of the Sol system. What followed was not a battle. It was a demonstration of everything humanity had prepared for 200 years. Weapons that the Empire had believed impossible. Tactics that no Imperial officer had ever seen. Coordination between dozens of species that the Empire had believed would never unite. By the end of the 9th hour, the Grand Imperial Fleet was broken. War Minister Grelix Vorn had died in the first hour. His flagship destroyed by the very weapons platforms he had dismissed as impossible. The surviving Imperial ships surrendered one by one, their crews too stunned to continue fighting. The Empire, the great Kethrel Empire that had ruled the stars for 80,000 years, had fallen in a single afternoon. Admiral Voska Rathal survived. She had been held as a prisoner of war on Earth during the final battle. When news arrived that the Empire was defeated, she did not know how to feel. Sadness, yes. Shame, yes. But also something unexpected. Relief. The long, painful pretending was over. The Empire had been exposed for what it truly was. A tired old beast, too proud to admit its weakness, until it was too late. The humans did not do what everyone expected. They did not claim the Empire's throne. They did not declare themselves the new rulers of the galaxy. Instead, they proposed something new. It was called the Concordat of Free Worlds. Every species would be equal. No one would rule over another. Trade would be fair. Defense would be shared. Former client species would help each other rebuild. And humanity, the species that could have taken the throne for itself, quietly pulled most of its forces back to its hidden colonies. They had never wanted an empire. They had only wanted to be left alone. And when that was not possible, they had made sure that no empire would ever threaten them or anyone else again. Admiral Thal lived for many more years. She was never sent home. She did not want to go home. She stayed on Earth, where she wrote her memoirs. Her book became the most important historical record of the war. It was read in every school in the new Concordat. Its final chapter had only one sentence, and that sentence became a warning for all species for all time to come. We saw a small, quiet world, and we mistook patience for weakness. And somewhere, in the dark between the stars, humanity is still building. And far out in the deep, dark places of space, in colonies that still remained hidden, humanity indeed continued to build. Not because they wanted war, not because they sought power, but because they had learned, once and for all, that patience and preparation were the only true guardians of peace. The galaxy had changed forever, and it had been changed not by the strongest or the loudest species, but by the quietest one. The small blue world that had been underestimated, and the patient people who had waited in silence until the moment was right. The humans had won their war. Now they could finally rest, but only for a little while. After all, the galaxy was very large, and there were always new threats gathering somewhere in the dark. Humanity would be ready. They always would be.